This is the Matt Report, the voice of WordPress entrepreneurship. If you're running a WordPress freelance business selling themes, plugins, or client services, this is the place for you. Learn more at mattreport.com and subscribe at mattreport.com/subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Matt Report, the #1 WordPress podcast talking about WordPress entrepreneurship, building WordPress businesses, client services, plugins, themes, software as a service, all kinds of fun stuff. If you've been loving the show, we'd love a 5-star review. When I say we, that's Lisa and I. Lisa didn't want me to bring her up in this podcast, but we're bringing her up 45 seconds into it. My executive producer would love if you left us a 5-star review so she can feel good about all the hard work that she puts into this podcast. You can find us on iTunes. You don't even have to leave a review. You can just drag your mouse over to the 5th star, press that, and then leave us a 5-star. If you don't like us, leave us 1 star. That's perfectly fine. We'll work hard to improve it. We're also on Stitcher. We're on SoundCloud. We're on mattreport.com. We're all over the place. We're on YouTube. You probably know us. If not, where the heck have you been? Hop on over to mattreport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. And this show is brought to you by my very dear product, Conductor. It's the plugin for developers to help building your WordPress layouts a little bit faster, a little bit easier. And if you're not a developer, it's also going to help you with that too. Today's guests, plural, Andy Cook, Nelson Joyce. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Hey man, how's it going? Thanks for having us.
Oh man, you guys are putting out an awesome product called Leadin, and that's what I want to talk about today. You guys are over at the Hubspot world headquarters, global headquarters, just 45 minutes north of me up in Boston, building an awesome plugin, sort of content marketing automation is what I was looking for, tracking leads, all of this stuff that a lot of us marketers and even WordPress business owners are getting into these days. So I want to talk about that specifically. I want to talk about what it was like for you to launch your product, sort of figure out what product to launch and how to get there and all that fun stuff. But give us that 2-minute elevator pitch of what Leadin is and what you do on your daily basis, on your daily day-to-day.
Insight. Sure, yeah. So Leadin, like you said, it's a project inside of HubSpot. We've been working on it for a year this October. And we work full-time on it. And yeah, so HubSpot has all these little experiments that it runs, and we're one of them. And it's been successful so far. And the point of the plugin is to help you find out who's on your website and what they're doing and kind of do whatever you want with that information once you have it. So it's been fun. It's been a fun year.
Awesome. How did you guys decide on coming up with this product? Was it something that HubSpot said, hey, we want this, or was this something that you guys went to HubSpot and said, hey, we really want to build this, will you help us out?
Yes, that's an interesting story. So I'll back up a little over a year ago. I had a startup called Rentabilities that I worked on for 3.5 years. It was a rental marketplace for stuff, so you know, like a bouncy castle or tables and chairs or a chainsaw, or all three. Come on our site, book it from a local merchant, and pay for it online. So I worked on that, and Darmesh Shah, the CTO and founder of HubSpot, was our first investor. And then about 3 years into it, we tried to raise a Series A, and we couldn't. So Darmesh said, hey, why don't you come over to HubSpot, Andy, and we'll put you on a special secret project. Your friend Nelson works here. We'll put you on a team together. So I said, okay. And so came into HubSpot, shut down Rentabilities, and the first day we met with the chief product officer, David Cancel, took us up to lunch. He basically said, what should we build? And we went, all right, here's what you're going to do. Build a marketing product for WordPress, probably for like small businesses, bloggers, startups. I'm not really sure. It should probably be free or cheap, but you figure that out, and you need to use orange in the logo. And that was it. Like, that's all the direction we got. So, you know, our first instinct was, oh, let's like just come up with a bunch of ideas and build them all and, you know, try to sell them. And then we decided we didn't want to do that, and instead we'd go actually talk to people and figure out what they wanted. So we scheduled interviews with like 50 WordPress users and just talked to them and found out what their problems were. And a few patterns emerged, like this pattern of, I don't know who's on my site, or I don't know what pages they saw or where they came from. So then Nelson did a bunch of mock-ups in Sketch, which is a design tool, He's an amazing designer. And then we just took those back to the same people and said, which one of these would you use? And the one that stood out the most was the contact timeline that tells you where people came from, what pages they saw, who they are. And then we just said, all right, let's build that. That's the one everyone seems to want.
That's pretty amazing. Before we get on, I love that part of the story, and I want to really break that down a little bit more, but how did you get Darmesh as your first investor? Do you have a quick story on how you even met him to get him to invest in your first startup?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I'm doing all the talking here. This is another good story. I have like 4/5 of a blog post written about this, so I'll tell it here first and then share with the world.
This is the exclusive.
Yeah, this is the exclusive.
This is what we like.
Yeah, so that's a good story that, again, wind back 3 years ago. So I was in a startup incubator called Mass Challenge, which is a Boston-based accelerator. I applied to it with my brother, who I co-founded Rentabilities with, the first year they started the program. And a little bit before I had applied to that, I had read Inbound Marketing, written by Darmesh Shah and Brian Halligan, the founders of Hubspot. I was like obsessed with it, right? I went to college, I got a marketing degree, and I read that book and learned in like 4 hours more than I learned in an entire 4 years at school. And so Mass Challenge, when I was in the accelerator, we would bring in speakers every Friday for what was called Founder Friday, where founders would just come in and tell their story. And a couple weeks into it, Darmesh came to speak. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like the guy who wrote that book I love. I was a little bit of a fanboy. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And so I went on to get a coffee and came back, and right before his talk, and I'm sitting in the elevator, and Darmesh walks up next to me. It's like, I was like, oh my God, I'm riding the elevator with Darmesh. This is crazy. And so I was like, oh, I should do my elevator pitch. Get in the elevator. I'm thinking about it. Go up to the 14th floor, and the only thing I messed out with, good luck. He's like, thank you. So then I watched his talk, and while he gave his talk, I took notes. Then after he was done, I went up, and being the fanboy I was, brought my book up and just said, can you autograph this? He was like, yeah, totally. What's your name, Andy? What are you working on? So I told him. He was like, all right, cool. Nice to meet you. So then I went home that night, and I wrote a blog post with the exact quotes that he said during his talk. I called it 14 Startup Lessons from Darmesh Shah. And it was literally just quotes. And I put it up on the interwebs. I tweeted it, made sure to tag him, and then he retweeted it, and I got like probably a couple hundred users. Darmesh came and left a comment. And then he started following me on Twitter, and then we were both nocturnal, basically. We just started going back and forth on Twitter, got his email, we built a friendship, and then eventually when we were going to invest, we just sent him an email called 4 Ways Darmesh Shah Can Help Rentabilities, and it was different levels of help that he could do. We formatted it like a blog post, and he took level 4, which was to invest in us. So on a Friday night, I think I had a few drinks. I got that email back, and the email basically said, congratulations, guys. You've unlocked the investor commitment at 2 a.m. on a Friday night badge. This is back when Foursquare was cool. And, yeah, he just committed through that. It was a long-term endeavor to get him. We basically made friends and built a relationship with him. But, yeah, that's how we did it. It wasn't like I knew him before or anything. It was the relationship.
So, listen, you know what I'm hearing here is the underlining lesson of all of this is get drunk and send people emails. So I hope everyone takes that away and learns from that. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, one of the things, and I'm so glad that this is kind of very timely. I wrote a post today, something I heard from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a pretty prolific internet marketer, and I don't even like to use that term for him, just entrepreneur and just all-around great idea guy, super passionate. Anyway, he talked about giving 51% to get the 49%, and I think what you did was spot on. You didn't just hit him up and say, hey, here's our product, here's my elevator pitch, would you give us money? You wrote a blog post, you sort of put the spotlight on him, gave him a little value, though he probably didn't need it, but it was still a good gesture. You wrote about him, and you played the long game. It wasn't just, here's my idea, give me some cash. and that's awesome. And I really appreciate as somebody who gets a lot of these requests a lot or frequently that you did something like that. And congrats to you. It worked out well, just maybe not for the business, right?
Well, it did work out well for the business at the time because, Darmesh was one of the first people on Angel List, and he introduced us to all these people on Angel List, and had a lot of clout there. So we were actually able to raise a seed round off that loan commitment, basically, which got us going. I learned a ton doing rentabilities, even though it ultimately didn't pan out. And now I'm better off for having tried, and here I am 4 years later, working at Darmesh's company on it, like startup and startup with Nelson.
Awesome. So, Nelson, let's hear your point of view. Why the heck did you partner up with Andy? What possessed you to say yes to Andy?
Well, I've worked with Andy. I worked at Rentabilities for a short time as an intern, and I don't know, he's just a badass. He's like one of the only people I would drop everything to just work with him. We were in the same 7th grade class, actually, so we've known each other for a really long time.
Fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. Mr. Downey. Yep. Yeah, so I've been working at HubSpot for like 3 years at that point, almost, and it just seemed like an awesome challenge, right? You get to start a startup, basically, inside of a company at no risk. Basically, you get to just reap all the learnings from that. So it seemed like a no-brainer at the time.
Let's talk about the strategy a little bit, and especially maybe from the design side of using Sketch to kind of prove the product before building it. How did you I know you guys said that you talked to a bunch of WordPress users. What was your design process like? How did you even start from scratch on the canvas, even though you were using Sketch? What did you do as your first steps to kind of concept the product?
Yeah, so I mean, because I was at HubSpot for so long, like I had so much domain knowledge about what the disproportionately valuable things in HubSpot were. So HubSpot's a gigantic product. There's a lot of stuff it does, and like I said, there's some parts that are way more valuable than other parts. So we kind of focused on those parts of HubSpot that provided 80% of the value, right? 20% of the features. So like using that, like those instincts we had around that stuff, and kind of just took those features and said, like, what is the simplest version of this thing, right? Like, how can I strip every other piece away that doesn't need to be there and just start with the kind of the bare metal stuff? So we had a bunch of different mockups. Like, the context timeline was only one of them, and we just did them. I just did them as fast as possible, right? Because, I mean, that's what I do, or that's what I was doing at HubSpot, just doing mockups all day. So I could do them pretty fast. And then Andy. And we had some other help from some of the researchers at HubSpot set up all these interviews, and we were able to just show people really fast. Like I think we did 50 interviews in like 2 weeks or something, right? So we were able to, and even between interviews, like you show someone something, and then you could go change the mock-up before the next interview in like 20 minutes, right? So you're actually able to like do very fast iterations and kind of test a bunch of ideas really, really fast, which was awesome. It was a cool process. It was a fun month or so doing that.
Yeah, I launched a campaign very similar to that when we launched Conductor, and I sort of got the idea from the Lean Canvas. I don't know if I think it's called the Lean Canvas Guide or something like that, but I know my process was I sort of already had an audience. I knew a bunch of people in WordPress, so I hit up 35 people. I talked to them on average maybe 45 minutes to an hour, demoing the product, giving them the idea. What was your process like? In that, was it just quick 15-minute phone calls? Did you record anything? What were the technicals, and what was the process like?
We split it up. Like, so we each did like 25 interviews, I think, and like the general structure was like get them to tell you as much as possible about themselves, right? Like don't tell them anything about what you're going to show them. Don't like seed their brain with all these ideas, right? Like just get their unfiltered kind of view of the world and stuff that's going on. And then once you have that unfiltered view, then you can show them like what you have.
Yeah, the mistake that most people building things make that I found is they try to sell the product to the prospect, right? Where the better alternative, so you can learn a lot faster, is to let the prospect sell themselves. So you ask questions like, what do you think this product does? What is valuable for you on this page? It's really open-ended questions, and you let people start talking, and then you'll uncover insights that you never would have uncovered if you just tried to sell people directly and tell them what they should think. Yeah. And then you take those learnings back, and you use the jargon and the words people use to describe the product, and you just bake that into what you're doing. Pretty fascinating. It's a very mean way to test whether what you're trying to build even resonates with people.
Sorry, I was just going to say the most important thing to do when you're interviewing someone in those scenarios is don't have them kind of like hypothesize of what they would do in a certain situation, only focus on what they actually have done. And a good way to actually figure out what someone has or has not done. So like say you ask someone, like, how often do you check your email, right? Someone might say, oh, I check it every single day. And then so this follow-up question to that would be, when was the last time you checked it? This is a bad example, but when was the last time you actually did that? And it might be, oh, well, I haven't done it in a week, right? So then you actually get to see like real usage or like real activity someone's doing, and not just like, oh yeah, I should be doing it this much, so I'm just going to say that's not going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that came up in the pre-interview with Lisa was you were methodical about figuring out what the problem was to be solved and not really starting with the solution. In other words, you didn't create the solution and said, and this is probably what you guys are getting at, this is what we built, what do you think? How would you give somebody that same advice if they were starting over again? Is it just through interviews? But how do you conceptualize where you want to go with the product? Or are you saying, before you even think about what you want to create as a product, talk to people first?
I think what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs get really excited about a solution, right? They see the problem themselves maybe in a very light way, and they get excited about some sort of solution, and they still build it. Where what you should be excited about is the problem and unearthing all of the different idiosyncrasies with that problem. And the best way to learn about the problem is just to go talk to people about the problem and hear what they have to say. We had the added advantage of we actually weren't even sure what we should build. It wasn't like we got together and said, oh, we both have this issue and we both think this is how you solve it, so let's just go do it. We were kind of just like, all right, what should we build? And the best way to figure out what to build is just ask people. I don't know if I really answered the question. But
there's like a balance. You gotta have a balance between and I'm not saying you can never have an idea and think of it yourself, right? But it's like when you come up with those ideas, you have to ask people about them. You can't just assume that you're right about stuff,
Yeah. What I'm trying to maybe narrow down to is, because some folks listening to this might be like, hey, that's a great idea. At my next WordCamp, I'm going to just start asking people what their problems are, and then they're just going to get a ton of different things. Well, WordPress isn't good on mobile. Plugins are very hard to find. Themes aren't responsive. And they're going to start finding all these different things. Now, of course, you could trend that and maybe track that. But should the entrepreneur have some product in his or her mind that they might be trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think that you should go with the thing you're most excited about. And so, you talk to a lot of people and you see a recurring pattern that okay, WordPress doesn't work well on mobile, and that's something you're excited about and you're knowledgeable about, you should go after it, versus something that might be a little bit of a better opportunity, but you don't care about it at all. Because that's going to end up coming through in your work and the way you answer support tickets and how fast you do it and the way you build the product and how dedicated you are. The thing I like to throw out to people is you should be very, very methodical about the ideas you pick, too, to work on. Because if you're even remotely successful, you're going to be working on this thing for the next 4 or 5 years of your life. You should like the general space that you're working in.
Always good advice.
Yeah, rather than just chasing the money.
Right.
Yeah.
We started with, we didn't just say let's fix a WordPress problem. We said WordPress marketing for small businesses, right? So it's not like it was completely blue ocean. There was kind of a maybe semi-focus, not completely focused, but we were going in a direction, right? We had a vector.
And guardrails.
Yeah. So how did you guys stay on point with everything? You're getting the feedback, 50 people, you have their ideas, you have your ideas. How did you sort of put this in some kind of ranking system and prioritize what was winning and what wasn't? How did you guys do that from the technical level?
So To answer your question from a while ago, we recorded everything first so that we didn't have to keep track of it in our brains. And then because we were working on each interview separately, I didn't know what the interviewees that Nelson was talking to were saying, and he didn't know the ones I would say. So we opened up a Basecamp Basecamp account. We would post the recordings and then summarize the key points from each recording that we thought made sense. And then, if he didn't believe me, we could listen to the full interview if he wanted. And then from there, it just over time became clear which of these fake products that we were peddling, we weren't peddling them, we were showing them, but which fake products we were showing were the most valuable to people. So there were a couple that people just weren't interested in at all. And then the one that really stood out was the timeline approach. Like, people used words like, I love this, or, oh, is this a real product? Can I put this on my site right now? And we'd say, no, not yet. Let's put you on the beta list. We just kept a MailChimp list of people who said they wanted it.
We hadn't written a line of code at this one either. So
we just had a bunch of mockups. So then we kept track of all those people in MailChimp and who wanted what product. And then just by the people who said, I want this right now, we were able to basically gauge which product was the best. And the good thing about that is when we finally launched the product, we had a list of people to send it to and get it installed, and they knew who we were. And they were early adopter types who wanted to talk to us about a fake product, so they dealt with all the bugs and the crappy first version.
Were you mocking up 5 or 6 different fake products at that time, or did you sort of just present the fake stuff, for lack of a better term, and then sort of narrow down on sort of the concept of Leadin as it is today?
We had a bunch of them. I would say 4 or 5 at least. What else? I'm trying to think of what else we did.
So there was one where we wanted to build what we have now in the product at the time, which was a fake product when we first launched it, was the pop-up form builder that we have in our product now. And that's an interesting story, which I'll go into, but we just wanted to build a pop-up form builder similar to something like Optimus or something. And that was one of the products that we showed people. Like, oh, you can pick where you want the pop-up to go and collect email addresses and that type of thing. And then we had the contacts timeline, which showed people where people were coming from and what they saw. What's some other ones we had?
I think we had a weekly newsletter.
Oh, right. Yep, that was a good one. So another idea we had was it would take all of your WordPress posts for the week, let's say all of your interviews from that report, put them in a nice newsletter, and then send it out to your contact list automatically without you ever having to format the newsletter. Then there's probably something like that exists too. We didn't do a ton of research on that one because no one really cared.
We thought of that. We thought it was genius. We got excited about it. But then we showed people, and they were like, "No, I don't care. This doesn't interest me at all." So it's like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, with the pop-up builder, that was actually something people wanted. And the interesting thing was we decided because we only have limited resources, we're going to focus on the one which people wanted more, the one that people fell on the love side of the spectrum versus the I don't care side of the spectrum. And we built out the contacts tool and then stored them all in the WordPress backend. And then we had this issue where people who don't have forms on their site would be like, oh, this is cool, but I can't use it because I don't have a form. So then at that point, we were like, oh, let's build in the contact pop-up to help them collect new contacts and store them in their database. But
and then even when we did decide to build that, we were able to build that thing really quick because there was an open source library that people at HubSpot built to do these pop-ups. So we just literally spent 10 minutes and just took this open source code and just stuck it in the plugin, right? And it's we didn't have to spend 2 weeks building it before we could actually try to give it to someone, right? So we spent a day putting that in the plugin, and then the next day we could say, here's this plugin code with this pop-up. Do you want it? And people were actually saying, yeah, I'll take it, right? So we didn't guess that people might want it. It was just
sure. What was the conversation like to finally say, this is what we're going to move forward on? Did you have some kind of tallying system, or was it finally just looking at all of those interviews and saying, this scored the best, and let's just go with the contact, or did you just know it in your gut and move forward with that?
It was mostly a gut decision with a lot of internal debate. a lot of discussion. And with the interviews, we did so many of them that we eventually started hearing the same things over and over again. And we knew at that point it was time to build something. So we weren't learning anything new. The best way to learn new stuff is to get a product in the hands of users. So we just discussed it and we argued back and forth. And then eventually we just said, like, okay, we're going to do the contact timeline and we're just going to make a bet on it because all the research that we've done, like, we think that that's the best one. It wasn't like preordained that was going to work or anything. It was just like the best decision we could make given everything we've learned, and we hoped it worked.
I mean, it also was like you have to also like think what you can implement quickly too. That also goes into the decision, right? Because like if you have two ideas that are similarly interesting, but one's going to take 2 months to build and one's going to take 2 weeks to build, you should probably try the 2-week one first.
Yeah.
Because you get people using it much sooner, right?
Let's fast forward to where the product exists today, or in the iteration that it exists today. Is there anything that you'd probably want to say you might take back from this whole journey that our listeners should be sort of apt to know when launching a product? Was it too much in design? Was it too much in discovery process? Was it not marketed in the right light when it first launched? What is that takeaway for launching this product?
I'm giving this some thought because I don't want to just blurt out the first thing I think of and lead people astray.
My opinion is that we should have been charging for it a lot earlier. I mean, a lot of that had to do with the fact that we're inside of HubSpot, and we didn't need to. So we didn't have to. We didn't need to like right away. I mean, not even to make money, but like that helps you validate stuff even more if people are willing to pay for it, right? So even if we had 10 customers at this point, I would feel more comfortable about where we're going to go with the new version of everything.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We're a product of our environment, like Nelson touched on. But yeah, I think if we had charged earlier, we would have had a better idea and had more speed behind us and more confidence enough making decisions. Because we would have known, like, okay, people are paying us for this, so we must value this, and let's just keep paying on it.
Do you think it would have validated the product? Trying to think of a way to phrase this. Do you think that the customer, if they paid for something, that they would have felt more committed to the product? In other words, did you find people in the freemium side saying, hey, this is great, I downloaded it, I installed it, but you don't really know if they're engaged because they don't really care because they're not paying anything? Is it because of that, or is it more of just a metric that said people pay for this, so it's worth it, let's keep building it?
I mean, I think we had this juxtaposition where we said, okay, let's keep improving the product and making something that people love. But it was never clear, like, okay, we have product market fit, let's grow it now. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of new products make is they grow too fast when they shouldn't, and they don't have a good product yet that doesn't retain people. Or they grow too slow when their product is good enough and it does retain people, and they should put all their eggs in trying to acquire customers. If we had people paying us for it in the beginning, we probably would have known that a lot sooner, whereas it's taken us like 9 months to finally get to a point where it's like, okay, we have enough people and they keep this thing on their site, let's just grow it now, which is where we're at now.
And where does the pricing model come from? What kind of research, or what was that conversation like? I know HubSpot might have influenced the sort of freemium, and you had some of the resources, but what is the pricing model today, and how did that conversation go?
So we just like used our best judgment on that, and to be 100% candid, that is a complete experiment in progress that we're not successful or we haven't failed yet. We're hoping to actually launch our premium version today. Some of like the research we did beforehand was we just talked to people and said, how much would you pay for this? Or we asked, would you pay for this? And if they said no, we said, okay, what would you pay for it? And then if they said yes, we say, okay, how much would you pay for it? And then we just looked at what other plugins doing sort of similar things were charging. And then we decided to charge annually instead of monthly because it tends, or at least from what I can tell, that tends to be a convention in WordPress, like that Reforms does and a lot of other companies do it. It's also going to make accounting for us way easier, so it seems like a good idea.
I mean, in terms of like how much you charge for it, I think what we do a lot is like picture where you want to be and then like work backwards from that. And it's like, okay, how are we going to get from where we are now to that, right? Like, this is how much money we want to be making or need to be making. Like, how many people do we have now? Like, what % of people do we have to convert to paid versus, and how fast we're going to need to grow, like, the user base. So I think that's another good way to figure out the pricing model too. It's like, where do I need to be and want to be in 6 months or 12 months?
Yeah, my best piece of advice would be you're always going to be working on pricing. So if you have something that you think is valuable, start charging for it, whatever you think, and then double that price because you're probably not charging enough, and just see if people will pay you for it.
I mean, also, you always can change your pricing. It's not like just because you decide today you want to charge $10 doesn't mean that next month you can say $100, right? And then you just grandfather everyone in who's paying $10, right? So,
Is there anybody on the HubSpot council looking at the WordPress industry going, these people are insane, like $40 for this for a lifetime? We're charging $500-600 a month for our lowest end product, I think, roughly off the top of my head. I mean, is anybody on the HubSpot council saying, man, these prices in WordPress, they need to change? Are they sort of convincing you to raise the bar a little bit?
I mean, we're thinking that. I don't know if anyone in the higher up in HubSpot is, but that's definitely our thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we have enough autonomy inside the company where no one's telling us you have to charge at all or you have to charge this amount. It's just we can figure it out and do what we can discuss. We personally think, like Nelson just said, people building products in the WordPress ecosystem are not charging enough for the value that they're creating. And hopefully, I think from what I can tell that mentality is starting to change over time. And there are precedents like Gravity Forms and Themes and these companies that have been built over a couple of years that have helped to change that mentality.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you guys for recognizing that and bringing that to a great product and bringing it into our market. What is next for Leadin, feature-wise, vision-wise, team-wise? Like you said, today you'll be launching the first premium or paid part of the product. What's the long-term goal 6 months to a year from now?
So our biggest challenge right now is figuring out how to grow the user base. So we've spent the last 12 months building something that we think people really, really love. And the types of feedback we get is amazing. We get like 5 people just emailing us cold like almost every day, just saying how much they love the product and thanking us. So I think we're there on a product sense. And now we need to figure out, okay, how do we take the thing that's working and then 10x, 20x, 30x the install base, which is going to be extremely challenging, but we can figure it out by doing what we've been doing this whole time, which is running new experiments, doubling down on the things that work, and then getting rid of everything else. So there's only 2 of us right now. We have limited time, so we can't invest in new experiments for the growth channels that aren't working. I think that's another thing that a lot of plugin developers who are trying to build products don't think about it. There's this mentality in software development that if you build it, they will come. But they won't come if they don't know where to come and they can't find you. So thinking about distribution channels really, really matters. And what we did to combat this as we went was every week we kept track of how many downloads we had and the rate of change every week. And we said, okay, we need to be growing 7 to 10% every week, which is like what Paul Graham says is the magic number for startup growth. And when we fell below that, we stopped working on product and then started working on acquisition channels again. And then as soon as we got back above that threshold, we kept working on product. So you have to have a balance between the two.
Do you think how much do you put? Let me stop and rephrase this question. How much do you depend on the .org free plugin repository to drive the traffic. Do you think that without it you wouldn't be where you are today, or do you think otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, we get like 60% of our downloads are from .org. So, like, in terms of like user base thing, like, yeah, we need that, like, at least for now. But I mean, if we were just trying to sell something, probably not. But since we're trying to get a big base before we sell something, I would say it's pretty important.
Are you measuring any metrics that say this is organic? I know this is such a tough thing to measure, but it's an organic .org search download versus, hey, I heard about these guys from podcasts, from another blog post. I'm going to go try this. In other words, what is it that you're doing organically versus people downloading you because they've heard of you and they just heard about the product being so awesome?
So that's in the WordPress ecosystem, that's extremely hard to measure accurately. One of my biggest personal pet peeves with the WordPress plugin repositories is absolutely no metrics at all for plugin developers to basically figure out what their best acquisition channels are, their keywords, or often A/B testing the copy on the page. Can't do it. Maybe someday I'll just like hammer on a weekend and write a whole library. I'll keep track of it and try to commit it to the core. I don't know. But, I mean, you can sort of hack it by doing what we did, which was in the plugin you can opt in to email updates from us, which tell you about new features that we're working on. And Nelson set up an autoresponder in MailChimp that anyone who opts into that, we reach out to them and we say, thank you for trying out our plugin. We have 2 questions for you. Why are you trying this thing out, and how did you find us? And based on that how did you find us question, you can get a rough sense of whether people are coming from your site, whether they're coming from Google, they got a referral, they found it on social media or whatever, and then kind of engage with them there. But it's not ideal at all, and it shows a better way to measure it.
Yeah, I can't agree with you enough. It's very tough to obviously measure that stuff. There's not a lot of help in that sector for us as product developers, plugin developers. Themes is a whole other animal. We're on .org for themes. We're not there for our plugin, and the theme stuff is hard enough. I can't even imagine the plugin stuff. Although you do have a little bit more freedom in the plugin, like sort of the tracking stuff, the opt-in tracking stuff, and sort of capturing that stuff. So I hear you 100% on that. Gentlemen, it's been an amazing interview. There's so many good nuggets of information for folks to take away, whether they're building their product or building their first product, or they want to start tracking some marketing info for their blog. Where can folks find you on the web to say thanks?
So our website is leadin.com. We're on Twitter, Leadin app. And then we love getting direct emails from people too. So my personal email is andy@leadin.com. Nelson's Nelson@leadin.com.
Nelson Joyce on Twitter, Andy G. Cook on Twitter.
Yep. Yeah, just reach out with any questions.
Yeah, we'd love to talk about this stuff with any plugin developers or product people or whatever. And we're going to be at, well, this is probably going to air after this, but we're going to be at WordCamp in San Francisco as well.
Nice.
That'll be fun.
Wait, did you guys buy Leadin.com before you started, or did you buy that while you were there?
That was actually a gift from Darmesh.
I was going to say, that's a damn good domain.
Yeah, that was one of the other things I missed in the first talk we had, which was, the name of the product's Leadin.
Oh yeah, they told us the name.
So they did tell you the name.
Yeah, sort of. They said, well, here's this domain you can use that Darmesh owned. It's a great domain, and
yeah,
it's bad, so.
For sure. Awesome stuff. Folks, find them on Twitter, search for them in the WordPress.org plugin. Just go to leadin.com. I use it on a bunch of my sites. It is a phenomenal product, and I don't say that about everything. So go ahead and check that out. If you want to be one of those entrepreneurs who's out there trying to figure out, or if you are one of those entrepreneurs out there trying to figure things out, the best way to learn is our pro section at mattreport.com/join, and join the membership, private forums, monthly mastermind calls. We're answering all these questions, or at least Lisa is, very, very diligently in the forums. Thank you, Lisa, for being not only the executive producer, but the community manager of the Matt Report Pro section. Learn more, mattreport.com/join. Gentlemen, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us. It's great to talk to you.
Amazing to meet you.